You again.
It's been a while, a long while, a long while.
And always smiling early morning. This is wonderful.
Yes. And I hope you're well.
I am well. I'm doing well. God has been so great and kind to me. So I can only say thank you, God.
Yeah, nice. You're not within the 24-hour Economy Secretariat. How is your new job treating you?
A transition from diplomacy to to serving Mother Ghana. It's been wonderful. I would say that Honorable Guzitano is an extraordinary leader.
Okay.
I have seen, I have served many international leaders, including the likes of Ban Ki-moon and Guterres through my work in the Sahel region.
Okay.
Some very stalwarts in leadership I've seen, even in private sector and others. But watching Guzitano and serving under him has been an extraordinary time. He's very visionary. He's very supportive, and he's extremely intelligent. He humbles me whenever I speak to him. And the team that he assembled, my co-director as well, Abdul Nasser, and Trecho Poku, the coordinator, and all the team. These are, I'm very lucky to be in such an extraordinary team. So I really want to thank them for giving this opportunity to serve.
Well, and I realize that in many of our earlier conversations, you always have a concern about where Ghana was going, learning from some of the things you're seeing in other African countries. Generally, you have a concern about Africa.
Yes.
And then you narrow it down to Ghana. And I guess when this position was proposed to you, what made you decide that I would take up this position? And how does it fit into your greater concern about where we are heading to?
Yeah, this is a very good question. You remember those days, as we interacted, and I was really talking a lot about the geopolitics in Africa, where Africa is heading vis-a-vis the world. And particularly my concern was the Sahel region as well, and how Ghana is an oasis of peace, but I'm not sure how we're going to hold the peace given the incursion of the Sahel challenges coming to us from particularly the northern part. And then it was streaming towards the coast, and so it became a big concern. When I was approached to provide this support, when I had a conversation with Guzitano, but I've also had prior conversation with some, the Executive Secretary of the President and so on. And, to leave, it's not easy to leave a UN job to come and work. But I think circumstances provided opportunity for me to do that. I had taken a sabbatical for personal reasons in support of family because, and I had some challenges to say, okay, well, what do I then? I thought to use that moment to reflect where again do I want to go, because I have seen most of my seniors in the UN system that they retire and then they come home and they feel very frustrated. But they come home at a time when they are older. Okay. So, you retire, you are 65 on, and how much more can you do to help your country? So I said to myself, I really don't want to be that old to take a break from the UN and come and work for the country. Okay. And so when I had this opportunity, I thought, well, it's useful to make that transition. And here we are. This transition has happened faster than I thought. And also, I'm blessed to be working under the 24-hour Economy Secretariat. Initially, my thoughts had been different, because I was looking at a different, ministerial position, things like that. But I think this is very good.
Great. Well, now let's narrow down to what you've been doing. So
yes.
You seem to have made a lot of progress. Last
Thank
week,
you.
2 things were launched, the policy and then the program.
Yes.
When we had you on the line, we were trying to explain the two.
Right.
First of all, now that you are in studio,
yes.
First of all, let's start with the policy.
Okay.
If I pick the document, what do I see?
So when you pick the document, you see an attempt, a policy shift, which is aimed at constructing a new economic system for the country. You would see that when you read the document, the policy is compelling you to understand that Ghana actually, like many other African countries, inherited a colonial economic structure which we have continuously be living with for many years. And my work across over 36 countries in Africa and working with head of state and government to really identify development programs and support and policy and supporting some of the government trajectories for vision and so on. And even like Ghana, we come out with Vision 2020. We came with agenda for food and jobs. We have a presidential special needs initiative under President Kufuor. Every government seems to come out with something. And similar for many African countries. All tells you that there is a certain struggle to wean ourselves out of something that we have not been able to identify. And for us, we sat very carefully and did a deep introspection with the president and our team to say, okay, what is it that is troubling the country that today you are doing well, tomorrow we are not? And we came to the conclusion that there must be a policy shift that constructs a certain vision for the country. And that vision must be anchored around an economic transformation agenda, which if we prosecute, it will gradually lead us to that to that destination where we would have turned the tide and would have actually confronted head on the colonial economic system that we inherited. And what is that colonial economic system? So now, when you look at the 50s and the 60s, but primarily, ordinary within Africa, before we had our revolution and decolonize, Africa was feeding the rest of the world. Even after the World War in 1945, the hub of production was in Africa because we have the capacity, we have the manpower cheaply, and we have the arable land. But what we didn't have was the technology. So the colonial people were actually they brought the technology to enable us to produce food for them. Now, when we decolonize, they went away with the technology. So the economic system, the structure for us is continuously to produce raw materials for the developed countries. They add value to it, and then they resell to you, very expensively. And the medium of exchange is also not a currency that you possess. It's a currency that a foreign country actually has created. So United States or Europe, they put the dollar or Europe or the euro, and then you transact business using the monies that they have cut. So they are better off than you in most instances. So then if you continue to have Vision 2020, presidential special needs, the 1D, 1F, beyond aid and all of that, and you do not address the structural economic problem you have, you will end up continuously become dependent on external forces. So we thought that the policy must shift us to become robust and resilient and self-sufficient. The policy must shift us to be able to produce for ourselves what we need. And then we would then attract the needed technology through the mobilization of the private sector and investment that will come through it to add value to what we produce and then export. Now, our vision for the export is inspired by the African Continental Free Trade Area agreement that we have. The fact that we have the headquarters here and the fact that Ghanaian goods can find itself in that. It is also inspired by the ECOWAS markets, and it's also inspired by the fact that Ghana is at the if you like, at the transition or at the holding up, of our Sahelian region, where because of the climate change, they're going to have challenges with food security. And we can actually be the hub that can produce that food so that we can export it to them, either in raw form or as in processed beverages or food items. And we also have the opportunity to then attract, through foreign direct investment, the needed skills and the talent to then start addressing some of the basic needs that we have. Our agriculture, our clothes we wear, garments and textiles, our medicine, pharmaceuticals, and then the technology and manufacturing of what we need, even our building and all of that. And then we need to also address our human capital and make sure that we are ready for this kind of economy. So that's the policies. The policy, therefore, in summary, the policy shifts us to construct a new economy in which we become self-reliant, produce, and become very productive, produce outputs for ourselves and for industry, and be exportable. And it's a policy that ensures that we mobilize the entire nation to build the human capital we need and to be able to shift ourselves into that economy. So it's our dream and vision that by the time we are successful, Ghana would have weaned itself out of the colonial structure of economy, which we feel is very deformed. This is the reason why today we are importing 80% of everything. And of the 80 billion GDP, Ghana controls only 20%. And our 20% is in our mineral resources, in cocoa, and also in crude oil. And all of these are exported as raw materials. We don't. So it's really this is not tenable. That's why we are not creating the jobs. Okay. So we need an economy that can actually create the jobs for us. So that's the policy. Now the program, the program is a structured vision that makes sure that we use the policy as a catalyst to help us to be industrializing, become ready for export and accelerate the export, and to create jobs. Okay. So industrialization, export, creation of jobs. The end goal is to make sure that we have a workforce that is really ready to engage the modern economy and is actually tapping into the fortunes of West Africa economy. The West Africa economy is huge. West Africa alone, the population is 425 million people. Okay. Now, I mean, if you're making $1 or 11 Ghana cedis or 10 Ghana cedis out of, 10 Ghana cedis a day in a family of 425 million people, we are actually talking about a family of probably 400,000 people. A family of let's say 1.3 million households. Okay. Now, if you are making 10 Ghana cedis as value for 1.3 million Ghana households, then you're really looking at huge 130 households. I'm talking 30 million households in West Africa. Okay. Then you're really looking at more than 1.3 billion. Now, if you are only selling pepper and you're making 10 Ghana in Ghana, in 3% for a household, that's about 10 million. So you see that you're going to make about 300 million Ghana cedis a day. I mean, the market is huge. Okay. So how do we make sure that we tap into our market and create more of the value that we need, so that we control our economy? That's how we create jobs. That's how we become resilient. That's how we are not exposed to shocks, and so on and so forth.
Interesting. You're just talking about the Sahel, and it just occurred to me that actually the Sahel is the one that gives us food nowadays. So we are the ones who take food from Burkina Faso, Niger, and among others who supply us food. You are trying to reverse this.
Yes.
It should be the other way around, obviously.
Because we know it is not sustainable. They're making the best out of what they have. Because of the incursion of the Saharan desert. They're also using technology. Okay. And they're also very deliberate to leverage the technology with the human capital they have. So they are doing extremely well. And they have Sahel has the potential to transform itself into a food basket. But the process might take some time. At the same time, I mean, if you look at Ghana and the arable lands that we have and the Volta Economic Corridor, which we can talk about later, what we can do out of it, we will be more than able to produce the diversity of food we need for ourselves and also create surplus that industry can use, add value to it, and export. And the Sahel, we are very woven and integrated into the Sahel economy. Most of them are inland countries. So they depend on our ports for things. Now, if you have ports, and you are half of production, then you can circulate your production all around. And that creates a lot of value for you. And that's where you create the jobs. And that's where we make our youth who are studying all types of engineering and all types of science, and history and so on. That's why we make them valuable into our economic system.
Okay. I see. But because, let me I'll return to the policy.
Right.
Okay. So first, and I also come to the point that some of the things you're saying sounds like the vision of Nkrumah.
Yes.
Like we're going back into what Nkrumah thought Ghana should be.
Yes.
But first, the policy. Now, you say that many a times we draw policy without really identifying the issues that we are trying to address with those policies.
Yes.
Now, which issues do you identify as the major challenges you need to address with the action plan, which is the programs?
Yes.
So what were the issues you identified as the major drawbacks that you need to address?
So the first was the fact that our economy is completely deformed, as I explained, and it is a colonial economy. You cannot continue to build around it. Otherwise, you'll be just investing in dealing with symptoms. So you need what I call surgical operation.
Okay.
Now, when you do a surgical operation, you go down to the root of what the problem is, whether you cut through the heart or you cut through the prostate or whatever, to remove that cancer.
Okay.
So that's what we did. We had to have a deep introspection. We looked at what has worked well in all the policies from Kwame Nkrumah time up to today. So we looked through all those and look at all the challenges there. And the second, we came to the conclusion that Ghana cannot continue to go on this trajectory where you export raw materials and you bring finished goods in. We have suffered with our acidic depreciation. We have suffered the loss of very significant manufacturing companies who have left this country and they are relocated to Côte d'Ivoire. And so we cannot continue this trajectory. And then the third is the job crisis. You have a workforce of probably 11.2 million to, let's say, 13 million workforce. Of these, over 80% are in vulnerable employment, which means today they have job, tomorrow they don't have job. They don't have jobs that pay for their pension. They don't have jobs that enables them to save to be able to even build a house. They don't have jobs that enables them to pay for their 2 or 3 children to school. So, and then you have another 20% who cannot read or write any local language and so on, which means they are not literate in any subject area to be able to do something. So you have to inculcate in them skills in order for them to use those skills, create entrepreneurial opportunities for themselves, so you can formalize them into the job market. So this job crisis, which we are very scared of, 2.3 million of these young people, 18 to 25, who are going to be about 3 million or so by the end of this year, if care is not taken. You have 3 million young people. Now, what can we do to avoid a 3 million young people, 18 to 25, carrying machetes on the streets? We cannot afford, but we have to deal with this issue. And we see the poverty all around. The inequalities is growing and so on. And what really struck us as the ultimate point is the sheer volume of imports and the types of imports that we have. You import almost $350 million, which is probably almost to 5 billion Ghana cedis today, of the intestines of animals, gallbladders, and so on. So your chop bar on the street is subject to import of materials that you could have produced in this country. How do you import $350 million of nearly 5 billion Ghana cedis of intestines, Yemwandie, which in 10 years is going to be 50 billion Ghana cedis?
On that alone?
On that alone. And it's the second largest import.
I see.
Second largest import. Now,
Yemwandie.
I'm telling you. And that really, it broke our heart. When we analyzed this with the Ghana Statistical Service, the day that this data was presented to us, it broke our heart. And then we also investigated the import of the poultry that comes here. Between 5 to 10 years, they are dump products where unfortunately, somebody had to pay for this product to come here and to be sold to us. And Ghanaians are importing this. It's about $450 million.
The chicken that is brought into
Yes.
this country, you're saying that some of them could be as old as 5
Yes.
5 years.
Yes, they are done products. So we have to really be very, very honest with ourselves. So we said, what type of economy do we have? Where are we going as a country? With all the wisdom and intellectual properties that we have, the capacities that we have. And you see, when you travel and you see Ghanaians abroad, they are the most excellent individuals. There are Ghanaians here who are excelling in many ways, but they cannot have a full expression to the market. We even talk to an industry that is producing antiretroviral drugs. They are producing all types of drugs that are used for prostate cancer and so on. But they don't sell in Ghanaian market. They sell to 16 countries out of Ghana. And they are all in West African countries, East and West African countries. And you ask them, why don't you sell here? They said that it is not competitive to sell in Ghana market. So a lot of things are happening. We also have some people are manufacturing fridges and air conditioning in this country. But they don't find expression on our market. So there's so many things are just wrong with us. So the only way to do this is to be very courageous and bold, to undertake a surgical operation on our economy, to restructure the deformity and streamline it. This is why we came out with this program that is anchored on 3 pillars that I said 3 inspiration pillars. Transform your production. Really look at what all that is. Transform how you bring your market together to link to production, to create a prosperity, supply chain and market efficiency, and then invest in your human capital to make sure that they have the skills, talents, and the ethics, and the mindset and attitude to be able to work through this new economy.
So production, markets,
human capital. Yes.
Those are the 3
inspired pillars.
Okay. And I'm wondering, in your policy, what do you intend to achieve with all this, with the programs that you have identified? What's the ultimate objective of
so
this?
So the KPIs are these people, and this is what we want to. This is our social contract on this. Number 1, we want to be able to create at least 1.7 million jobs.
1.7 million.
Yes. Okay. 1.7 million jobs.
That's a lot of.
Yes.
Those are many.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We want to create that.
Do you have a time period within which you intend to create these jobs?
Well, within let's say 4 to 5 years, we should be able to create more than. So this is what we set to ourselves, and our target is 1.7 million jobs. But our KPI is between 70 to 80% of that, and even exceed it. But let's be very conservative. Number 2, we want to be able to ensure that we reduce our import bill by at least 50 to 60%.
50 to 60%.
At the moment, it's $2.5 billion. So 60% of that will be probably, 60% will be.
You're around 1.7, 1.8.
Yes, billion. So we want to be able to save that, begin to save that within the next 4 years. We want to be able to create about 10 industrial parks, all right? And probably another 50 agroecological parks, which I will explain. Now, these are zones of production and integration into manufacturing. That will create the jobs, that will enable us to export, and that will enable us to reduce our import bill, and that will give us probably 20 to 30% more addition to the contribution to GDP. All right, so we want to be able to do that. This is the dream that we have. Now, somebody will say, and we are discussed this earlier. Someone is well, but where does all other things, 1DYF, planted for children, where do they fit in? I mean, what is so different from here is that we have constructed ourselves around organizing production, ensuring that production links to industrialization, and we are also doing our production mindful of the fact that we live in a global ecosystem where Ghana has made subscription to their contribution to climate change. Ghana, in order for us to access global market, we need to standardize our production. So we don't just produce, but we have to standardize it. What do I mean by that? It has to meet ISO 9000 quality certification standards.
Okay.
You use deforestation standards. He also has to meet environmental and social standards and so on and so forth. So the only way you can do that is to create an agroecological parks where you have an integration of biodiversity conservation, your smart agriculture, and so on. And we also want to be able to unleash new ways of innovative financing to the country. We cannot depend on our traditional sources of gold and natural resources and primary products and so on. We have to get new money coming into the system. That's how you work the new economic structure. So the new economic structure we are seeking to build is an economic structure that lends itself to innovative finance. What do I mean by that? Some of them, blind financing, diaspora bonds, for example, tap into the sheer wealth of the diaspora, both in terms of the investment, the external market they create. We're talking to diaspora. There's a gentleman, who is launching a book recently, Money. He has is the representative of more than 5,000 supermarket chains across the U.S. This is a Ghanaian, born and bred here, went to school here at University of Cape Coast, very respected. So we want to tap into this type of people that have the wealth that can bring remittances. We want to be very smart at using our remittances beyond just monies coming for our funerals and so on. But this could be money that we can actually creatively tap into to invest in the strategic areas of our economy, so that the diaspora themselves will have value, whereas Ghana also has value. So we can build the type of schools we want. We can create the types of pension schemes that we want. We create the jobs that are very decent for our youth to be able to sustain. We are building the future. So now we are building a future that would transcend you and I. We are working intergeneration. That's why this document was written by people between the ages of 24 to 69. Very intergenerational thinking went into this. And it was written by Ghanaians themselves. It was not, we did not get a consultant from international consulting firm to write it. Okay. And by the way, this product we've sent to across various think tanks, various strategic universities, including my own university, my professor, economics in Oxford University, who came back with some comments. And the comment was, this is the most strategic document that I have seen that can transform your country. And this is coming from Oxford professor. So we are really able to do these things because we have been very deliberate. And a lot of sacrifices go into this. And that's what we really want to do.
And a few things. One, you talk about transforming as in markets.
Yes.
Our markets.
Markets, yes.
What should that mean? How do I know? And when you say markets, define it for us, because I realize it's part of your title, your position.
Yes.
So exactly what do you mean by markets?
Right. So today, when Ghana produces something, in a vision where we want to go, the president said, the 24-hour economy is a policy and a destination.
Okay.
So
a policy and a destination.
Okay. And what I like to say is, so it's a slogan we have within our team. 24-hour economy, our destination. 24-hour economy. Why? Because we have to work towards that outcome. Okay. Right now, the market, Ghana has strategic opportunities here. We have opportunities. So we are creating, for example, a cargo line in the northern region, Tamale, so that they can lift our goods and services. When you walk through the Votalek transport, connected to some feeder road to the airport, or maybe a rail to the airport, then it can take our fresh food to northern Europe, to southern Europe, and to other parts towards linking to Asia. Okay. So these are markets that already are there. Recently, Federation of Exporters went for export in Spain, and they were given a bill to export about $250 million worth of horticultural products. They have not been able to meet that target.
Okay, $250 million.
$250 million worth. That's the small part of the interest that people have, because Ghanaian goods are organic, they are very premium, and they are so palatable. And people come here They send, their traders to come and buy our share nut and then go and add value to it for other products. If you look at our traditional herbal products, all these things can be professionalized, modernized, and converted into food supplements. That can be exported to deal with the prostate cancer, the hypertension, and all the things that our traditional herbal medicinal practitioners have been able to develop. These more than 20,000 different products that they have developed should find their expression in global market. So there's market for that. So that is not the market. There's also the market for African Continental Free Trade Area, which is trillions of dollars. How do we tap into that? Then there's the 425 million population of West Africans that are increasingly having challenges with health. So our pharmaceutical production go there, that are also having challenges with food security. So we'll produce to be able to meet some of those food security challenges. Then they're also wearing Ghanaian products. Our Hollands, our Entail, prints, and all these things. By the way, if you look at our textile, 100 million yards is what Ghanaian needs. We produce less than 20%. The rest comes from China and digital prints. All it takes to unleash this production and to meet this particular target by investing in technology. So that we'll move from screen printing to digital printing and invest in some of the machinery that is needed, and then inculcating skills in our people to transform from screen printing to digital printing and so on, which we are teaching them in all of our visual arts and in the universities. So the new market is in that. Now there's also a new market for made in Ghana products in Asia. China wants more of us. By the way, China said they are not even giving us any tariff to import to export. You know why the new markets are there? Because all of them have aging population. Those who produce for China to send this thing, they are old. But we have very young population. So the world is looking at us in terms of our labor force. This is why we are investing in our human capital strategy. So we have a workforce that is digitally fluent, that is very skillful, that has that work ethics, that can work in an industrial setup and is very globally competitive. Both in terms of skills, the imagination, the competencies that they have. We have leadership, we have organizational abilities, we work in teams, we have the attitude, we have the mindset, we are entrepreneurial, and we are ethical. We show integrity, devoid of share laziness in everything that we do, so that we can then become the alternate destination for some of this that is being required. And nowadays, if you are digitally fluent, you can actually sit here and teach mathematics and make £4,000, £5,000 in the UK. Because, so this is what we do. We're creating, so these are the new markets that we're creating. And by doing so, we are creating the jobs that are required. So the jobs is not just in agriculture or manufacturing. The jobs is also in provision of services. Because you are digitally fluent, you have the capacity. You can provide services overseas. You can have doctors here who can actually do diagnosis via technology and be able to work with another, medical center in overseas as though they are there. Because this is what is happening. Now we have AI technology, robotics and so on, that can work machinery. So really, these are the things that we are trying to do. Remember, we are resetting a whole economy, and linked to that, we are resetting our cultural norms, we are resetting our markets, we are resetting our bureaucracy, because the civil public service need to match up, and they need to provide the things that are consistent with this type of modern economy. They have to be agile, they have to be versatile, they have to be more professional, they have to provide things with speed. So you have GIPC, GPA, police service, everybody are mainstreaming this product, this 24-hour economy, into their own way of doing business and identify bottlenecks and the things that they want to be able to deal with. And this is fascinating because it is like mobilizing the entire government machinery. And we want to do the same with Ghanaians, which is why we have the Go 24, that is the, you know.
And because you're entering into the programs, now the question is, how do you do all this? Because obviously we've complained about our public service provision. In fact, a lot of complaint about civil servants, public servants, even in our education system, so much complaint about health system in terms of the quality of services that's provided. All of that, you seem to be saying we want to change, we want to create a new Ghanaian that's able to fit into your vision.
Yes.
How do you intend to do this? The programs that you've lined up, because I've heard Go
24.
Okay, so take us through some of these programs and what they are intended to achieve.
Okay, good. So you asked a question, two questions, I think. One is our implementation strategy, which I think is important to delve it, and then the programs. Now, let me take us through the program quickly, and then I'll come back to how do we implement.
Okay.
Now, the first is Grow 24. Grow 24 is agriculture, modernizing agriculture, addressing the issue of post-harvest losses, irrigation, production and output, and organizing our production around cooperatives, production associations, anchor farmers, and then linking that to industrial parks. Okay. Because we want to make sure that the behavior of industry is so changed to conform to modern requirements already. So production will meet environmental requirements, ISO 9000 requirements. It will meet organic requirements, yield deforestation requirements, and so on. So we organize what's called the agroecological parks. This is why I call agroecological parks. And it is going to be all over the 16 regions, over 200 of them. But the first 2 years will be about 50, and they will produce the staples, that we need: the rice, millet, maize, the edible oils, groundnut, soybean, and palm oil. They also produce our vegetables, onions, the tomatoes, and so on. They also produce poultry and also our fishery sector. So we have a range of products and these products were chosen because one, they have products that we depend on, meet our food security issue. Two, we import too much of those by way of raw material or food imports that way, and they add to our import bill. And three, they're industrialable, so you can have value chain out of it. So you don't produce just your cassava, but you have your flour, you have the cassava starch, industrial starch, you have the alcohol, and all these things can be sold through by adding value. Then Make 24 is how we organize to really build an ecosystem of production, right? So we are producing our pharmaceuticals, agro-processing plants, agro-processing products, then construction and building materials, and also manufacturing equipment to bring the technology that we're looking at. Now, the Make 24 is different from what we're saying we build 1DY or things like that, because it looks at two things, a couple of things. One, making sure that the energy for the factories in the industrial parks, we thought through that. They are reliable, they're accessible, and they're there. That there's water storage facilities that industry can access to accompany our production. That there are warehousing and cold chains that will allow for minimum processing. All right, and that you have modern technology that underpins all of this, and they are supplied through the energy and the transfer of skills. And then you have farmer service centers and so on that will work this out and so on. So we've created a production ecosystem through the Make 24 to produce made in Ghana goods. Now then you have the Build 24, which addresses our infrastructure needs. Our people must build our bridges, they must build our roads, they must build our housing. Now there's build in strong collaboration with Building for Roads and Research Institute, or CSIR. There's a national catalog of, local materials that can be used for all types of building and prototypes and so on. We want to be able to bring them into manifestation. Not just our research, but our research must find outlets for it. So through the Build 24, we're going to unleash all these innovative ways of housing. Senna, if you go to Europe, you see the houses there. In Netherlands, it's so different from the houses you find somewhere in Denmark and so on. They use their local materials, they use the local patents. Yeah, technology to do this. So this, even the way you build your house, if you go to Rwanda, in some of the places after the genocide where they are rebuilding, the houses you find there are uniquely different. And that alone, the spatial distribution of your uniquely different houses, makes way for even urban tourism. So somebody will come and look at that. And these are affordable, and these are things that makes us Ghanaian. So we want to go into that and build 24. Now, Connect 24 is where we link production to prosperity. How do we bring our goods faster, at scale, and in quality and quantity onto our market? And critical to that is the new economic corridor that we have created through the Volta Lake as a transport. And the Volta Lake would transport the goods and services from remote parts where we cannot access. And because of that, we don't access it, so they don't do the agriculture. But these are arable lands that are very fertile, inundated by the tributaries, so we can leverage the tributaries for irrigation. And at the same time, we can also use the land to grow more than 60% of the strategic value chains that I've indicated. And then you can transport them north, south, east, west, across the tributary with inland ports all over the place, and linking them to industrial park already. So you have the Connect 24. Then you have Fund 24. I spoke to you about creating market, and then when you create market, then you inspire investment. Now, investment coming in different forms, and this program in necessarily private sector is a platform. The 24 economy is a platform that is actually mobilizing private sector in Ghana that we have never mobilized them since Kwame Nkrumah time. We're talking, and in Kwame Nkrumah, the difference is that Kwame Nkrumah was using state-owned enterprises to do that. But this one, we are using private enterprises to do that. In other words, we're creating the enabling environment for private sector to be so attracted to our market because we have, number one, because we have the market for it. If you are agro-processing company like Goya or like Tesco and so on, that you're coming in to this country to set up, or even our Melcom. If Melcom decides that I want made in Ghana tin tomatoes, made in Ghana pepper, and all these, then you have about 2.5 billion of imported food or a market. So the market is there for you to be able to come in, and is even more. All right, if we expand our productivity. So the Fund 24 will look at all types of innovative finance strategy. I spoke to you about diaspora investment bonds. I spoke to you about climate financing because of the agroecological banks, opportunity to generate carbon credit, register the carbon credit, plow back the funds that then will benefit the producers. So you make money from your garden eggs, but you also get paid for minimizing impact on the climate change. I mean, it's fascinating. Then you have blended financing, private equity. Now, part of the Fund 24 is looking at investment in our infrastructure. Okay. By which I mean your irrigation, your energy infrastructure. And the energy, we're looking at solar, biogas, waste to energy, and then we have the grid. And these are embedded solutions in agroecological parks and also in industrial parks. Okay. So Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund is our strategic partner, creating SPVs for private sector that will come in through blend financing, debt, equity, and so on. At the same time, the enterprise and financing, anyone who is hearing me today who want to go into agriculture, manufacturing, cosmetics, beautician, all of that, or you want to go into creating content for music and so on. We are creating what we call the enterprising financing, SME, Small Medium Enterprise Financing on Learning Platform. Okay. Now, this is managed by DBG, DBG, Development Bank of Ghana, because this money is not commercial, and with our support from the governor, my brother Esiama and his team, they created they put this innovative product into a sandbox, which means that it has a forbearance on the public financial private financial institutions such as APSA and so on. So the money goes to DBG at a concessional rate, and they on lend you through the banks, your Exim Bank, your Venture Capital Bank, then ABSA, CBG, all of these banks, Stanbics and so on, they lend it through you at a rate that is less than 10%, and has patient capital. It's a patient capital. So your tenor of loan that you get will be between 3 to 5 years, in terms of before you pay. And then he addresses the issue of collateral. All what you need is to make your project bankable. And we de-risk this investment. We de-risk it with GESL and also external sources of risk. De-risking, both providing insurance for the product that you produce on your market, and also insurance for the ones that actually lend the money to you. So, we've worked out this financial ecosystem. And when we talk about 4 billion, we're talking about that this is what is coming through, both the enterprise finance and infrastructure. Majority of the only money we get is, as an authority that we're going to become, government must produce a seed fund into this, or a viability fund. We call it a skin in the game. This is international best practice. This makes common sense and should not be argued against by anybody. You cannot set up such an important initiative for the country and you don't demonstrate that you have a skin in the game. So you hear people say, well, where are you going to get money? But the seed funding, this is only less than 10%. But it is to create the institutional structure, is to help us to create a viability connection funds for the infrastructure funds and SME lending, so that our lenders who we are working, and they are, by the way, none of this money is going to be on a ledger of Ghana. So this is going to demonstrate to the world that we have a skin in the game. Then the last two is Aspire 24, which has to do with the digital skills, the mindset shift, the attitude. In order for us to make this happen, we need to be Pan-African thinking. We need to be nationalist thinking. We need to love Ghana. We need to work on ourselves. Make sure that we know that our time is valuable. You can sell your time for value. You can create value. You can create value by acquiring some skills. Skills in that Bill 24 with your hands. So you can be the tilers, the carpenters, and all that. So we should go back to days where Ghana was manufacturing things, where our people, our Ghanaians are the one building our bridges, they constructing our roads, and when you are building a house, you have Ghanaians actually building it and not people. We are not saying we don't want other people to come in, but we are losing our skills and artisans. So Bill 24 giving you inculcated skills, digital fluent, dealing with you, the human capital, in terms of making you ready for engaging such a world-class economy. To work in an industrial setup that is required, and giving you the capacity you need to be able to do that. Then Go 24, final one, is Go 24 is how we mobilize bureaucracy, ministry, department, agencies, districts, and making them part and parcel of delivering this, And then Show 24, the creative arts, the beauticians, So we're going to have, we're going to strengthen the creative arts through the National Creators Academy, and also over 200 different cultural centers are going to be refurbished. We're going to make our culture, our storytelling, our festivals an important part of the trajectory of our development growth. So these are the things that we are actually putting together. Now, when you put all this together, you'll be able to establish the economy that we're looking at. Now, what's the implementing strategy? The first is, policy. Before an investor comes, he needs to know what incentives, what policy exists. So we have a plethora of policies, incentives that at the moment is being put together with support from the Attorney General's Department, and we'll work with Parliament and so on to make that full expression. So between now and December, that should be laying the building blocks for it. The second is that the economic corridor for VOTA that we're developing all the conceptual frameworks. When I mean conceptual, the actual activities that we're going to set out where the agroecological parks should be, where the industrial parks should be, the rate of return, and we are working with the with the finance institutions or private sector investors who are already expressed interest in this corridor. So we are working with them to be able to develop and formulate the program and the strategic partnership agreement and the financial agreement to be able to get them ready to move. So that's the second thing you see. And the third thing you will see is a national mobilization, working with all ministries, department agencies, particularly in the district sector, to ask the question, how do we mainstream this into their development plans? How do we make it happen? So how many industrial parks are coming to which district, to which region? How many are going to which sector? How many agroecological parks are going into which districts and so on, and working with them and looking at all the value chains and identifying how we spatially distribute all this. We have a map and we are engaging them to actualize all this. So by the end of the year, you'll be able to have a picture of where our industrial park and ecological parks are, where we are taking off, in which industries are moving on, the signature, the signing of financial instruments and so on, and then the coordination structure, which is the authority being set up.
Well, thank you. We need to take a break, and when we come back, we'll address a few more issues. Then we'll move on, because when we're talking about, you mentioned about, is it 8?
Yes.
Okay, so 8. There's all these 8 programs. When you put them together, you're talking about virtually everything that happens within Ghana.
Correct.
Okay, and the interesting part is that as we speak, when you're growing 24, the Minister for Agric is doing Feed Ghana.
Yes.
Okay, so there are many other policies being implemented in other areas that are also intended to bring some level of transformation, a different approach to things, effectiveness.
Yeah. So I'll provide a clarity for that.
So we'll come back. I want to understand how all this feeds into the bigger agenda of the government. Are you going to be disruptive?
Yeah.
Do you take over everything they will do? Or what happens?